Hello and welcome to Pickle's Garage. Today we are replacing the water pump. I noticed that there are some signs that it's been leaking. Typically that front gasket there, you'll see that sort of corrosion down by that bolt right here, and then on that lower pipe. I'll also show you underneath, which also shows signs of leaking, which is common. I mean, these are getting pretty old, so if you notice these sort of things, if there's any sort of corrosion like that, that really doesn't happen unless it is leaking. So we're going to go ahead and replace it, and I'll go into a little bit of different things about water pumps in general, and we will go from there. Alright, so this is the new water pump that we're going to be throwing in today. A number of different connection points and bolt holes. I will say that this is still a good repair to do yourself, just because I went into a mechanic to recharge my AC, and he also noticed that the water pump was leaking, and he quoted me that the absolute cheapest he could possibly get the part for without any labor was $340. So naturally I went to Rock Auto and found this for $70. So definitely worth doing it yourself. Just fun little fact, there's really two main different types of water pump. There's going to be the electronic version and the mechanical version. Electronic is going to be powered, and that turns the impellers on the inside to pump your water, and then mechanical is going to be like a wheel, usually belt driven, that spins and that turns the impellers. This one is actually mechanical. It just has a gear here on the back that's going to go into the engine, and then that will spin, and that in turn turns the impellers. So let's go ahead and start diving into it. Alright, so we are under the Camaro, and first things first, we're going to want to drain the coolant. You're going to want to flush it anyways, just because if there was some sort of damage to the water pump itself, you don't want that to mess up your new water pump. So anytime you're doing anything related to the cooling system, changing hoses or whatever, it's just a good idea to get some cleaner and flush the system. So that is going to be kind of step one, is turning this thing here. It's on the passenger side of the radiator, just a little tab. You're going to turn it lefty-loosey naturally, and it will drain out. So I'm going to do that off camera, but I did want to show you the bottom of the pump as well, just to show kind of more evidence that it's been leaking pretty substantially. This car is still new to me, so I'm still finding different items that are kind of wrong with it and repairing as I go. So worth a check for your own, just to see if you have any evidence that looks like that. The other thing as well is a lot of these water pumps will have a weep hole, which I believe is what that is back there. And so effectively what that is an early warning system. And so if some of the gasket or whatever is already failed, it protects the bearings and it keeps kind of coolant away from your oil. So if you notice liquid is coming out of the weep hole as well, it shouldn't be like a lot, but it can kind of flood out a little bit like that, because you could see a lot of corrosion around the weep hole specifically, and then also likely the front of the gasket failed as well. So while we are under here, we're actually going to be able to take off a fair amount of stuff as well. Like some of the hoses we're going to be able to pop off once we drain the coolant. The other thing is there's this sending unit right here. I'm going to go ahead and remove that while everything is still attached to the block. It might still have, or it might have some corrosion, and so it'll be kind of difficult if I remove everything and then try and take that off. So I'll go ahead and let you know what size everything was, but I'm going to go ahead and pop that clip off, and then I will take off that again once we've drained the coolant here. Alright, so draining the fluid now. It's just plastic, so you don't have to worry about torquing it too much. Maybe you have to use pliers just to get started. Just turn it counterclockwise. Like I mentioned, I did want to say as well, make sure you're being safe when you raise up the car. Get some decent jack stands, put your emergency brake on. I would invest in these. They're like Rhino lifts or whatever. I can't remember the exact name of it, but obviously you'll know when you see it. They're pretty helpful. Highly recommend. So I'm going to let this drain and we'll get to the next step. Alright, so we're going to give ourselves some room here by removing this air intake here. Quick screwdriver there, pop this plug straight out. Yours probably has a clip, mine does not. You might also have a bolt here. Mine was apparently removed for lightness, so I don't have it. But I'm gonna go ahead and remove that, and we'll go from there. Okay, so now that we have the air cleaner gone, disconnected this hose from it, slid it up through here, we're gonna go ahead and start taking off all the bits here. So in a nutshell, what you'll need: ratchet. You can use a longer ratchet, like I probably will. Extension, 10mm, when in doubt, usually 10. And then you can use, I saw 14 seem to kind of work, or 9/16 I think will work as well for the larger bolts, which we're going to remove some stuff before we get to that point. 3/4 is going to be for that sending unit I showed, and a screwdriver. Also for the hoses, I'm going to grab some of the ones on the bottom first. You can use something like this. They come in kits from like Amazon. I like them just because they lock in place, and so it's really good for hose clamps, but you can absolutely use pliers as well. So I'm going to go ahead and pull the tab off that sending unit here, see if I can do it one-handed. No? Alright, I'll do that down there. Pull the sending unit. I'll grab that hose to the left there, maybe that hose to the right, and we'll go from there. Alright, so like I said, clip just comes off here, this slides out, and then you're just going to set it aside. And then this is that kind of tool I was showing you where it locks into place, so we're just going to grip that, slide that, and then I will pull this hose out. Probably need 2 hands for that, so I'll do that. And then this is the 3/4 wrench. It is kind of weirdly loose, but then any other size was really tight, and I even tried metric as well. I think it's just kind of goofy, but you are upside down, so keep that in mind for the direction that you're turning. And I'll pop that off, and then we'll go back to the top here. Alright, so I got the temperature sender out. I'm actually going to replace mine as well, so I will show you the complete disassembly and more or less the reassembly, but I'm going to have to hold off until I get this, so there might be a little bit of a jump in the video. So the other thing I do want to remind everyone is you are probably still going to have coolant in the system, and so as you are taking off some of these hoses and stuff, I would still keep that bucket handy. But right now I am taking off some of the other more direct stuff. 10mm on this part here, and then this should actually expose our thermostat, which I might also replace. We'll see. I did a quick look off camera of how much these are. My local auto parts store for these, it's like 26 bucks, and for Rock Auto it's about 3. So obviously shipping included in there, so you gotta take that into consideration, but still not sponsored. But as far as backyard repairs are concerned, they're gonna be a good way to go. So see, still some liquid, not very much. So don't worry about taking off this hose, because you're going to take off this cap anyways. And then we'll be setting that aside more or less. And then this is that thermostat I was talking about. Actually, now I remember, I think I've already replaced this. Yeah, it's brand new. So if yours does not look this good, then replace it. But you see some of this debris here? That's why you drain your coolant and you flush the system, because you don't want to get that sort of stuff into your new one. So, but I'm going to go ahead and wipe this off and keep taking off some bits. So another hose right here I got to take off, and I got a hose right here I got to take off. So another thing these things come with is it's like a hose separator, more or less. So again, not super required or anything, but it does make it a lot easier to pull these off. Sorry, it's the first cool day in a long time, so everyone's out working on their toys. Can't say I blame them. I'm sure I'm the loud neighbor as well. But pop that off. Now I'm going to do a screwdriver here. So it's just one hose after the next. We're gonna get the hoses off, and then we're gonna start doing the bolts here. Okay, getting the last hose here. Put it down there. Like that. And then we're gonna work on the 6 bolts. So in total, you got the hose here, you got the hose here, you got this cap, which is going to have a hose connected to it that you don't have to remove. You can leave that on. You got the hose up here, and then you got another hose down there, right? And then you have that sending unit I showed you. Don't forget your thermostat that's in here. You're gonna wanna take that out and put it in your new one. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish up removing that hose, and we're gonna start working on these 6 bolts. Okay, now that we have all of our hoses off, you are going to want to inspect your hoses as you go. This one sort of split while I was taking it off, so I'm going to replace that. But now we're just going to take the 6 bolts, it's 3 on each side. I'll show you where they are real quick. They're all the same size. They're all that 14 millimeter. So there is that one right there, which you can kind of see from the top. Oh, right there. Okay, and then there's in the middle, see back there it's missing. I already took it off. And then underneath that, you'll see right there also missing. So those are your 3, and it's gonna be exactly identical on the other side. The only thing with this side though, is there are belts in the way. Okay, there's the top one, but I'll show you from underneath what the other 2 are. But I mean, it's basically mirrored to this, so you'll have to use some different sizes. The one thing I will say, those deeper set ones are water jacketed, so they do actually go into the block, and so when you pull them, if you still have fluid in your water pump, it might get a little wet. So this is a little bit of a wet job. I guess you'll have to grab your swim trunks for it a little bit, but just be prepared. You know, as much as you try and drain it, it's always going to be a little bit, so keep your head on a swivel. So from the top you saw the one. Now right between that belt and those wires right there, that's another one. So that's, spilled on myself again. So that is essentially your middle one right up there. Excellent camera work, I know. But I'll grab that lower one, which is right on the other side of this belt, right behind that. You'll see it on yours, but it's mirrored from the other side. So we're just popping off those. I'll get that off, and then we'll yank this thing. Okay, so we do now have the old one out. You know, I'm sure what you'll learn very quickly is some bolts are a lot easier than others. The 3 on this side really aren't that bad. They're pretty easy access. The one on top here is, you know, it's a little tight, but it's not terrible. The one on the bottom isn't bad, but the one in the middle, for these Camaros, if you have another, you know, LT1, maybe you won't have the same issue, but, or maybe you'll have different issues. But for this, I had to actually remove the belt itself, and then the issue is the bolt is back along here, and if you'll notice, it butts right up to this wheel. So once you have the actual pump in place and you have your extension or whatever you need in there, it butts right up to that wheel, and so it's very difficult to get off. So what I did, and I wouldn't entirely recommend this, especially if yours is really tight like mine is and even possibly corroded, but essentially I had a quarter drive, and then I did an elbow here, and then I stepped it up to a 3/8, and then I had that extension. So that's what I did. The reason I wouldn't recommend it is because I absolutely broke this elbow thing. It still sort of works, but you're gonna break tools doing that. The issue is if you try and use a 3/8 to begin with an elbow, it actually gets wedged up in that wheel and it doesn't turn properly. So I actually ordered something just in case I wasn't able to get it done with this method. I know, didn't have any faith in myself, but what it is essentially it'll be this same sort of socket size, the normal 3/8, which is around here somewhere, not here for demonstration, but it's got an extension like this, and the way that it was machined, it has dimples along these pillars, and so they call it a wobble extension. And so essentially it won't, here, let me find, it won't sit completely straight in. It'll be out like this, but you'll actually be able to be at more of an extreme angle than this, and I think that's the ticket. So I'm gonna have to use it to install it because I bought the parts anyways. So I'll let you know if it works, but it should work where it kind of sticks out like this and you're at a much more extreme angle, and I think that's exactly what you need to come off and not hit that wheel for that middle bolt. The other thing that is a little difficult is actually getting the unit out itself. I was trying to do it in a way that would require as little removal as possible. I was already upset that I had to remove the belt, but that is just necessary at this point. But I also had to remove the fan here, that electric fan. It's only 4 bolts, mine was only 3. Once again, weight saving. But basically it's just size 10mm. You'll see them, they'll be super obvious just in the corners of the fan. You'll need that to get it out far enough, and then from there I essentially had to puzzle it through. I wish I could give you a really clear-cut way of doing it, but you just have to kind of muscle it out. I pulled it straight down, I went down, and then I kind of helicoptered it out. And so it was upside down at parts, and then it all the way came back around to right side up, and then it finally went out. So it's just those really deep, long tabs that you have to mess with. So it's finally out, and I will show you the old unit and what you need to remove from it to start moving into the new unit. So here is our old unit. It didn't come off with the gasket. The gasket is still on the block, so I am going to have to clean that up. You'll have to do that anyways, but a lot of the times it will come off on this. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to kind of get in close to the engine and remove that. What you'll also notice is it has this sleeve here, and so that sort of just connects the gearing on the water pump itself to the gearing that you'll notice comes straight out of the engine block. So I'm going to have to get something to carefully pry this off. It's full of grease. I would recommend also greasing it for your new model. You already saw earlier we removed the thermostat, put that one in the new one. Your sending unit, you're gonna have to remove from this and replace. If you are gonna replace it with the old one, just inspect it and make sure it doesn't look all grimy, or if you have issues with getting a good read on it, then you should just replace it anyways. I will highlight the fact that they do come in actually a variety of different types. They all look like this, but then they'll have different inner tabs here. So it just depends on what plug setup it has and what functions it has. So be careful to make sure that whatever you buy, just look at the pictures. A lot of them will have pictures that look straight like that. And so just copy your old one and then buy that new one. Also, I did want to mention to remove the belt. It's pretty straightforward. You just have to get size 13 around that, and then you pull it clockwise with a ratchet. Pull it down until you get enough of the tension removed, and then you just remove the belt. And as always, I want to use as little unique tools as possible in order to remove a lot of these things, because I know most people are just going to have their average set of screwdrivers. I want to try and stick to that as much as possible, but a tool like this, like a pry bar, it really does make it super easy. You could absolutely use a screwdriver, even though all the warnings tell you not to, but I do want to point that out, that is sort of a lifesaver for that. So I'm going to remove that. I'm gonna clean up the outside a little bit, probably not a necessary step, but I just wanna make sure there's not a lot of grime in there before I re-grease it. Alright, so cleaned off the gear. I used brake clean for it. Checked the teeth. Teeth all look pretty good. Doesn't have to be anything too crazy. I just wanted to change out the grease. Got high temp STP. You can get at your local auto parts. Open it like peanuts. Ooh, nice and goopy. Basically, this is the kind of grease that works for everything, bearings, all kinds of stuff. So basically, good way to do it is get a good chunk and then kind of use your palm to press it in to pack it like that. And then the gears themselves, they're going to do a good job at putting it where it needs to be, but it doesn't have to be anything crazy. That's probably more than enough. And then I'm going to put it exactly like the other one where the ridge was against the water pump itself. So same thing. Gonna press that, take all the extra, put it back in, and then the rest of this video I'm gonna show you putting it back in, but it's just the opposite of what you did. Main important thing is going to be if these wobble extensions I got work. If they do, I'll show you exactly what I used to get it back in, so hopefully you don't have to do the method that I did to take it out that ended up breaking some stuff. So let us proceed here. Okay, so getting it back in, I left the fan off, of course. You're gonna wanna leave that off. I kind of rotated it with down that direction, so if it's facing like that when it's installed, down kind of that way. The deeper down you can get in, the easier you can sort of rotate it. You don't want to hit any of these lines or mess up your opti, so you're going to want to avoid a lot of these. You just kind of push things out of the way, rotate it down, obviously leave this out, and then once you can kind of get it lined up, then you back it in. So biggest thing is you want to make sure you're lining up that sleeve to the gearing. The gearing will kind of self-right itself as it goes in. There are tabs here that help sort of center it. I don't know if I can get it. It's right there. So right in the middle. Focus. Yeah, right there. So those tabs are supposed to help align it and make sure everything is centered. What you will find is the many manufacturers of these water pumps, they're all going to be a little different. So I wouldn't guarantee that those tabs are going to slide in perfectly. Mine slid a little bit and then it sort of stopped. And so I thought there was resistance on other things, and it turns out it was just those tabs. So when I did start tightening it, it did make a pop sound. So don't let that concern you too much. As long as you have everything lined up, you should be okay there. But those tabs will sometimes not be the perfect size. So I did want to mention that. Okay, so easy enough. I just used the kind of deep socket, 9/16, 14, both kind of work for the top ones. I was just throwing them right back, same way. The bottom ones, I used I also actually used this same deep socket. And then for the middle one on this side, I used the extension with the deep socket. And that is how I got that third one. So those three, nice and easy. Top one, not so bad. Bottom one, same thing, not so bad. I did get to use the wobble extension. I used a small 9/16, and then I tried to get as much of it as I could with my fingers just to get away from that wheel there. And then I was able to use the wobble extension like I had mentioned. I did buy it kind of rotated around like that as I was turning, but it was way easier than what I had used before. So I would say the wobble extension does work. You basically just half put it in. These work as a regular extension too, where it's nice and locked. But if you just kind of do it like that, then it gives you just enough of an angle to stay away from the wheel. I just kind of held it with my other finger so that it wasn't pressing against the wheel, and so it maintained that angle right as I was turning it. But yeah, not bad at all. I would recommend the wobble extensions. I got additional parts here from Rock Auto, because like I said, this split, and then I also got my sensor. And so if you have to replace a hose like I do, then you're just going to use a screwdriver and just turn these open, pop it off, put it where it needs to go. Same thing, basically all of these are held on with these hose clamps. And then you'll just replace all your hoses. So naturally this bigger one goes right here. This one you shouldn't have had to take off at all, so you're fine there. That lower one right there goes back onto that. And then that one with the plastic piece there is going to go on the side here. Be careful, that plastic piece right there, they do break. You can obviously replace it. That's actually a new one for me as well. But just want to be careful not torquing it too much. Try and keep it as straight as possible when you're putting it back. You have the 2 bolts up here that you're replacing on this cap. This goes straight down onto that. Then if you removed your fan, which you probably should have had to, you got 4 each corner. And don't forget about putting your belt back on with that size 13. You do have a diagram right here that you can go ahead and reference as you reline it up. Take the tensioner back down, put the belt on, and then you are good to go. Okay, so now that we've put everything back on, our air filter, connected this, connected our sensor, everything like that, we're going to do the last step, which is actually purging the system and making sure there's no air in the lines, because if there's air in the lines, it creates an air pocket and you can end up actually overheating your vehicle. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna fill up the coolant in this, and then we're gonna close everything up, and then we're gonna take a screwdriver and we're gonna open this up. And so what that's doing is there's an actual bleeder valve here, and coolant is gonna come out of here once all the air is pushed out of the system, because this is now the highest point of the vehicle, and so air will naturally be pushed and rise, and we'll go from there. So I'm gonna go ahead and start it because I've already filled up, I've already opened this up, and then we're going to wait until coolant comes out. All right. So what you can do is you can also keep topping it off, because it might be so low on fluid that there's more air in the system than it takes to actually get to there. So now it looks like most of the air is out in the tank, and so now it should be circulating through the engine here. Eventually we'll get some fluid out of here. There we go. So now we pushed all the air out. We're just going to close this back up. Make sure everything's topped off everywhere else, but now air is purged out of the system and we're good to go. Thank you very much for watching. If you like the video, feel free to like it and subscribe, and I'll make more for you guys, alright? Bye.